Well, hello everybody, and welcome to a very rare thing here, a review video from me, Critical Rocket. I'm having a look at Battlefleet Gothic Armada 2. Going back a long while now, I did a few videos about Battlefleet Gothic, the original one from Tindalos software, and I asked for a review copy, and they were very kind in allowing me to have a look at it beforehand in the beta, and got a review key. And yeah, this is it. This is the full-fledged sequel. A few base information packages about this, because I screwed up the sentence there. Basically, the game is broken down into 3 campaigns this time, overall, with the Imperial fleet, although technically it's the Imperials, the Adeptus Astartes Space Marines, those who don't know the lingo of Warhammer 40k, and the Adeptus Mechanicus, which is another offshoot group within the Imperium, and then you've got a Necron campaign and a Tyrannid campaign. And yeah, the game is broken into the campaign part, and then there's your skirmish/multiplayer section. And what you're seeing here is just some of the skirmish gameplay. I'm playing as a Tau merchant fleet on this one. That's a Kroot battleship. That's one of the larger vessels that you can get in the game. Fleets can range from tiny little escort ships all the way up to light cruisers, full cruisers, grand cruisers, battle cruisers, all the way up to like your flagships, like those monsters there. And the systems are very nice. The combat is still very similar to the original game if you played that, but for anyone who hasn't, essentially it's an RTS game. You have your ships that you can micromanage to quite an in-depth degree. You can set engagement ranges, the way you want your ships to engage, whether they want broadsides or frontal fire. You have to make sure that they're using all their abilities, so you can slow. If it's a single player game, you can slow the action down by pressing the spacebar by default, and that will allow you to. That puts the game into like a half speed mode, and then you can make decisions. I think you can also pause it entirely as one. You can make decisions on the fly, or you can just play it all in real time as the action unfolds. And different vessels have different strengths and weaknesses, and that's apparent across all the races that are in the game. You've got, in the Imperium, you've got Chaos, you've got Orcs, Eldar, several different Eldar, you've got Dalek Eldar, Tau, Necrons, Tyranids, and each faction, or each race, has very different styles of play. And as you can see, the action can get quite hectic on screen, lots of abilities being thrown around. You've got space mines, bombs that you can drop, you can send out bombers and fighters, you've got torpedoes, you've got boarding crews that can damage your enemy vessels. You've got the ability to repair your ships and the ability to you can even scuttle them if your ship loses all its crew. You can just set it up as like one giant bomb to catch out any enemies that are nearby. And yeah, the action can get quite hectic, and it can be a little overwhelming at first, but there is a nice learning curve to the game. Skirmish does allow you to basically mess around with however you want. You can build your own fleet from a set number of points, and from there you can test out different things. Every race in Skirmish has its own presets that you can take out there, and yeah, the controls are fairly simple, straightforward. It's smart they even have WASD for moving the camera around, so you have to worry about like using the arrow keys or anything like some RTS games still tend to do these days. But yeah, it's pretty cool. The actual visuals of the game, I've got no complaints with. Ships look amazing. The maps are very varied. The tile sets that you'd be fighting on. Although the action does take place entirely across a 2D plane, and that's because Battlefleet Gothic, the actual game, the tabletop game this is based on from Games Workshop, is itself a tabletop 2D experience. There's no height factor within, so everything is fought on one plane. But they've done a really good job of giving the spaces that you're battling in a sense of 3 dimensions. And as I said, you can get some really, really interesting visual backgrounds there. Some great nebulas to huge, like truly like monolithic style, like structures that you'll be fighting around, that kind of thing. And the maps can also have different events happening on them. They can have huge asteroids that get in the way of the action. They become physical barriers. You've got your standard asteroid fields. If ships fly into them, they take damage, and you've got gas clouds that you can hide in. You've also got things where you can have like space titans, just creatures that drift through the blackness of space. They can zoom across your field and act as another enemy that attack both sides. and you've got you've got like exploding like jellyfish type creatures and all weird stuff like that, all weird and wonderful things of the 40k universe to encounter there. And the mechanics of combat are, as I said, pretty straightforward. You can do everything with a right click to delegate targets and a left click to use all your abilities. And yeah, that part of it is good. They've really nailed the ship-to-ship combat stuff. It looks fantastic. Sound effects are really good, like cannons and like energy batteries and the firing. You really get a sense of the sheer scale of these things. Because one of the great things about Battlefleet Gothic is that it's always referred to as basically like battle churches, just blowing the crap out of each other. It's basically like huge cathedrals with guns, and that's what most of the Imperial ships look like. Tindalos have done a really good job of realising all of the vessels from tabletop. And I personally haven't played them, but I imagine most of, if not all of the ships from the tabletop game have been translated here. And yeah, if you were a fan of it, I'm sure you'll get a kick out of building your own fleets and playing it. If you haven't played the original game, this is a pretty good product overall for getting into it. The campaign gameplay, which there is a bit of footage of later on, is played from a turn-based perspective. So you have a top-down map of a sector, and there are numerous planets within these sectors, and they have different effects, and you have an income. And you can build ships for your fleets, but as you add ships, they increase your upkeep, so you need to conquer worlds that will give you more resources per turn. Amongst all of this, you've got AI factions that are battling over these different sectors as well. They'll fight each other as well as you, so you always have to be aware of where you're going to move next turn and what might attack you. And you can reinforce the sectors that you've captured with space stations and minefields and stuff that will help make it a little easier to fend off your opponents. And you've also got to contend with the fact that the AI will do the same. They'll reinforce their own sectors, and so there's a real give and take, and your ships can gain experience, they can become better, and making them more accurate, having tougher crews to resist boarding attempts. And yeah, there's the narrative running through it is chaos have once again gone on the offensive. They're attacking everybody, and oh, here we go. This part here. This is, you can see all the races, and then you can see all of the sub-factions of race. So say you pick Adeptus Astartes, the Space Marines, you've got loads of different chapters of those Space Wolves, Dark Angels, and that'll physically change the visuals of your ship. So if you pick, say, Chaos, and you want Nurgle as the sub-faction you pick, your ships will have like big grotesque tentacles and pustules and stuff on the hull, and there's noxious vapours coming off it. And if you pick a Slaneshi one, it'll be all purple and have little like spiky bits on it. And if you pick like one that's for Tzeentch, it'll have all kinds of archaic text written on it, and it's all like deep blues and stuff. So they've gone to town with it. If you've got a favourite faction or a favourite sub-faction within those, there's probably something there for you. And as I said, the different styles of play, you've got the ship viewer as well, so you can see what every faction ship would look like as you go through, and you can get a good look at the models. That's nice. I always love that in a game, an RTS game, where you can actually look at the different units and get an idea of the skills, the abilities, the stats, and it's just nice as well to be able to see these things. So it's a nice touch. I do enjoy that. This is for one of the Tau fleets that we're having a look at here. So yeah, going back with the campaign play is fun. By default, they do have a few settings that I wasn't too thrilled with personally, but this is more of a personal preference thing. I wouldn't hold it against the game, but they added a domination mode where maps will have these 5, 6, or 7 areas on the map that you have to send ships in to capture, and that starts to generate points for you. And if you reach the points total, you win the fight. Even if you were losing the battle, you'll still win the fight if you reach the points total. The problem for me personally with that was that it took away from the big fleet battles, because the AI is a little simple, and they will doggedly attempt to capture all of the locations, usually to their own detriment. While you as a player can obviously just focus everything you've got on attacking one group of ships and wipe them out and then move on and take the next. So it made it a little too easy. Or you had an opposite where there were just, the AI fleet would have too many ships, they could capture more points, and you would have ships to counter that, and you'd lose. Even if you were winning the fight, you'd lose on the points. Luckily, before launch, the developers did allow you to turn that off. So campaign, for me, the campaign is made much better by having the option to play without that as a objective mode. There was also, if anyone's familiar with XCOM 2, there was this the growing dread that the threat level increasing. Well, they've got a mechanic like that in the campaign where if you don't achieve certain goals within a certain amount of time, the enemy forces in the sector get more dangerous. Essentially, they get more abilities. Their ships are higher skilled and that kind of thing. And you can turn that off as well. So you can literally just make it a more relaxed experience where you're just building your fleets and you do the battles, you take over the sectors, and you upgrade things. Or you can basically the changes have allowed you to tailor the difficulty of the experience for campaign, and the campaigns do have a good amount of a good amount of length to them, a bit of girth, let's say. They as I said, with the 3 campaigns that are in the game at launch, and the developers said that a 4th campaign is coming, though they haven't said what faction that will be. I'm going to personally guess it'll either be it'll probably be the Orcs. Let's face it, probably the Orcs as a faction will get a campaign, because everyone loves Orcs in 40k. They're the most enjoyable thing. That's what we've got on screen now. Orcs, as a playstyle, for instance, they love to ram things, so they have a special boost button called the Big Red Button, which basically just thunders the ship forward and just crashes and things with tons of damage, because Orc guns are not very accurate. So you're not relying on them to shoot things, you're relying on them just to crush things with their immense weight and orkiness. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I won't lie though, I've had issues with some of the game on a technical standpoint. I've had a few crashes in single player, a few CTDs, nothing serious, nothing that's caused anything like save game loss or any kind of instability in the game. Just seems to be random crashes. Hopefully those will be patched out, whatever's causing them. There's a few odd little things that makes it feel a little bit, I don't know, at times feels a little unfinished. Clicking launch battle music will just instantly cut off. It's just dead silence, and the screen will sit there, and you have no idea what it's doing. You don't know if it's crashed or what, and then it'll just start loading. So there's a little bit of that. There's also some texture streaming at the beginning of fights where everything will look a bit potato, a very low res, and then the textures will pop in. Although I assume that's more of an issue with Unreal 4 than anything else. There is also a cooperative element to the campaign. You can invite a friend to play the campaign with you, and that's a nice feature. At the moment, at the time of making this review, that feature is considered to be early access, a beta that they're currently working on. So you have to expect bugs, and when I played the campaign with Frunica, we did eventually end up with a crash. Just in the middle of a fight, the game just dropped CTD, and we tried a couple more times. It wasn't working out for us. Unfortunately, just kept crashing, or there'd be some kind of bug. And that you can do that in skirmish mode as well. You can play skirmish matches, you and a friend, against 2 AI. That actually comes from another minor complaint I've got, the fact that I can't, on my own, I can't play a 2v2 match, because for whatever reason I can't add a friendly AI to the match. So it's either 1v1 against the AI, or you invite a friend to play 2v2. And I had bug issues with that. One match, it started with the cinematic, and Frunica just crashed the main menu. That was it. The round ended instantly. So that was a bit of a strange one. Not quite sure why it was doing that. Again, I have to assume that the whole cooperative element of the game is still essentially in beta and might need to be patched or adjusted in some manner. So yeah, mixed results with multiplayer. Single player is definitely a lot more stable, that's for sure. Yeah, the multiplayer itself does have a ranking system, so if you're big on competitive play, you can do 1v1 or 2v2 ranked ladders, and that's very competitive. I did play a few rounds of that, and yeah, you can get some pretty tough matches. Obviously, the AI does have its limitations, and in a lot of strategy games, people will find the best way of being able to beat the AI, certain tactics that the AI will use that you'll get used to. However, players will always surprise you, and so one of the big post-campaign draws for a lot of people is going to be the multiplayer. And sorry if you can hear a noise in the background. Yeah, so you're going to want to get yourself involved in that if competitive nature is something you enjoy in your multiplayer games. I've only played a few 1v1s, and yeah, I got my ass handed to me, but I'm not very good at RTS games. I'm one of those players who prefer the single player action. And another good change by the devs was in the original game they had a progression system. So the more you played a faction, the more you would rank up with them, and the more unlocks you would get for that faction, different skills, different abilities that you could apply to your fleet as an overall bonus. And originally they didn't allow that unless you played multiplayer, but just before launch they patched in the ability to play the game and in skirmish mode and rank up, say, the orcs, because there's no campaign for the orcs, so you can't experience all their upgrades normally. But with that you can level up the orcs and unlock all those abilities now. So there's a reason to play skirmish, which is nice because you can play each faction, get used to playing them, and unlock different aspects. The original game did have a better system. The original game had a kind of small progression system where you would start with smaller scale ships, and as you leveled them up, you unlocked the other vessel classes until eventually you could have really big fleets, and it felt like you'd put the time and effort and you achieve something. And this one, all the ships are available from the off. If you didn't like that in the original game, you're going to love it in the second one. If you preferred the system of the old game, you might be a little bit perturbed with that, but it's still not a bad thing. Building your fleets is still fun. Coming up with different strategies, different elements, different combinations of ships is still quite good. This is some of the campaign gameplay. So, as I said, you've got a system here of different sectors, and you can see enemy fleets are in red, your fleets are in blue. And in co-op campaign, you can assign control of any number of fleets, really, to the other player, and they control where those ships go and what fights they engage in. And during a battle you can share units, so you can, if you want, you can just micromanage one ship and another player can run the rest of the fleet. And that's quite cool. Once they finish the patching for that and getting all the features in, that will probably be one of the best parts of Battlefleet Gothic 2. So yeah, I mean, overall I do think this is pretty good. Technical issues aside, some of the crashing and the such, which I just assume will hopefully be a couple of quality of life patches. This is fun. I'm loath to give games a number because one man's say 8 out of 10, there's another guy's 3 out of 10. So I would say if you're a fan of the 40k universe and you enjoy obviously the sort of strategy games in the past, or if you just like kind of space combat games, which obviously there have been a few over the years, this is a pretty good choice. If you've not really looked into the Gothic sort of setting for tabletop, this is a nice way of being able to play it without forking out God knows how much on models and the such, even if they still make them. It's, as I said, it can be a little rough around the edges. That's all I'd say. There's some areas that could probably get some adjustments. Some areas that technically it might do a bit better on the UI. Could maybe be cleaned up a bit in places, make it not so chunky. Some of the voice acting can be a little repetitive for your ships because you'll get used to hearing the same voice lines over and over again, for instance. So maybe a few more voice lines would be fun. There's no modding support, which I think is a bit of a shame. Would have been nice to have seen some Steam Workshop support in there. But the devs seem to be open. They seem to be responsive. Evidenced by the fact that before the game launched, they made the changes to the campaign. They made the changes to the skirmish mode. So they sound pretty accommodating for that. So I assume future content will be more campaigns, maybe more ships. I don't know if there are any other factions they could add. As I said, I've not played the tabletop version of this before, so I can't really speak on that behalf, but there might be more ships they can add, that kind of thing. But it does look like they've got some plans going forward, and a mix of free and planned stuff, essentially. So yeah, it's fun. It's overall, it's it's worth a look at for the price. Not too bad. So I think I've rambled enough here. I think I've shown you enough of Battlefleet Gothic 2 that what I enjoyed. As you can see, it looks great. Hebe loves it. She's in the background. So I'll what's that, Hebe? Yeah. She recommends it. For the Emperor is what she's saying in Catties there. So we'll leave it on that one. You filthy Xenos, you heretics, should be cleansed by the Emperor's fire and all that good jazz. So yeah, have a good one all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.